And just on that, and you mentioned it right at the start of your last answer was around you reached out to this company cold and you got a job there. And this is a topic that I really want to speak more about because it's something that like almost everyone doesn't do this, and like people that I now speak to who work places, they're like, yeah, this is actually kind of a good idea. Just reaching out to people cold or like just meeting people that work at the company you want to work at. And I'm curious about your experience doing this kind of thing that's not sort of the traditional way of getting a job. Like you're not waiting for the company to list a job, to then apply and kind of go in and try and get the job past like 50, 100, thousands of other people.
Mm.
You're sort of going in. Like really sort of putting more eggs in their basket and connecting with people that work there and things like that. I'd love to hear your experience with that and even your process that you've done, and maybe there's other people that that have done a similar thing. Yeah, I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on all that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just crazy. Like job listings are the tip of the iceberg of the job market. Like people see these little things and go, okay, I'll apply for those, and they sit and hope for the best. But in reality, if you think about startups, they're always growing, they're always raising money, they're always hiring, and so many things just happen through referrals or ad hoc introductions or all these hidden job opportunities. And it's like, if you want to work at a startup, like startups by their nature like proactive people. And so the best thing you can do is be proactive. Don't wait for the job listing, make the job listing. And yeah, happy to talk through kind of my experiences here. So I suppose like I worked for three different startups in university. One kind of initially came when the first one was a startup called Tilt, social payment startup, and my first internship. And originally I was conceptualizing an app with friends called Friends with Deficits, and we were trying to like track debts between friends in different currencies. Did some competitor research, found this company called Tilt. I was like, damn, they've solved it. Oh, but they have an ambassador group at UNSW. So I emailed the country manager in Australia. I was like, hey, I'd love to join the ambassador group. He's like, yeah, sure, man. Open up applications, join that ambassador group. Did that for a couple months, and then that converted into a growth internship with them, leading an ambassador program of a couple of hundred students across Australia. So a ton of fun there. But I think kind of that came from, yeah, number one, the proactive reach out, so cold email. And then number two, being part of something related to the company before actually having the role. So an ambassador program is a great example, but it might be like, maybe there's like a beta testers group. Maybe it's doing user research for the company. Or maybe it's, helping promote the company or something. There are ways that you can kind of get affiliated with the company without actually formally being a part of it. The kind of internship number two was a fascinating one where there's a restaurant ordering startup called Table, kind of essentially kind of like, me and you or Mr. Yum, where you could kind of like order on your mobile in the restaurant and then wait for a waiter. This one I saw ads running for the startup on Facebook. I was like, and it was for a referral competition. They hadn't launched yet. I'm like, oh, this is super cool. I spammed it across a bunch of university discussion groups, got to like top 10 in referrals in like 24 hours or something. And then I reached out to the chief operating officer or chief executive officer on LinkedIn. I was like, hey, dude, like, yeah, love the problem you're working on. Super, super fascinating. I'm actually interning at a startup right now, but saw your thing. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to share this with like a bunch of people. Ended up getting to this referral position at this time. If you're open to bringing on a marketing intern, let's have a chat. Ended up meeting them at Westfield in Bonner Junction, one meeting, and then worked for them for like 6 months. So that I think that came from there are two things there. Number
Wow.
one, cold LinkedIn DMs are just amazing. And with cold LinkedIn DMs, like the key thing is like who, why, what. Who are you? Why are you reaching out? And what's in it for them? So explain like who you are. And maybe like you're a student majoring in this, interning at this place. Why you're reaching out? You came across them and really liked X, Y, Z about them, and what's in it for them? Are you open to taking on an intern? Not are you currently hiring an intern or currently seeking, but just say you open because no one wants to be closed. People might not have a job listing, and then you go, "Hey, you open to an intern?" And like, oh yeah, maybe. Let's have a chat. So it's a good way to get your foot in the door. And the other thing there is like adding value before you've even reached out. So I reached out after I'd gone and shared their app with a bunch of people, and that shows that proactivity where a startup goes, oh, cool. Okay, if we hire this person, we know we're not going to have to wait to give them instructions. They're just going to go and do things that help the company. So there's a cool piece there. Final one is an interesting one. There was a job listing, but it wasn't an internship. It was at a company called Offload, awesome like road freight logistics startup in Australia, and they had a listing for a full-time operations associate. I was working at Amazon all the time, so I'd been deepening my interest in logistics, but I wanted to kind of go and hop back into the startup world. And I had seen this listing, and I went, well, I can't do full time, but I could do part time. So I just applied, and then I just messaged the chief operating officer. I went like, hey man, like, yeah, love what you're working on. I've got, background at like Amazon and Uber, so passionate about logistics space. Context is, I'm still wrapping up at uni, but would you be open to, taking on someone part-time? And, had several interviews with the team and eventually like, yep, sweet. And so that was meant to be a full-time role, but turned it into a part-time role. I ended up going full-time there. So I worked there for probably 6 months. It was my last role before Atlassian. Absolutely loved it there. Really, the lesson is like sometimes a job description will tell you roughly what they want, but they're flexible. So sometimes I might say 2+ years experience, apply anyway. Sometimes I might say full time. If you want to do part time, apply anyway. It's don't sell yourself out of the opportunity. Have the conversation, and if they like you, they'll make space for you. If it's not the right fit, it's not the right fit, and that's okay. Some people go, you know what, sorry, no, we need someone full time, and that's totally fine. It's not a personal insult. But I think with a sufficient number of companies that you talk to, these opportunities will start to pop up where you can create job opportunities where you thought previously job opportunities didn't exist. I think kind of like wrapping that up, yeah, I think look, cold LinkedIn DMs to like founders and hiring managers at startups, super, super powerful. But I'd say as well on the kind of like standing out to company side, beyond just kind of like doing like DMs on like LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever, another cool thing you could do is like sending like a video resume or a video pitch to stand out from other candidates. So I've seen some candidates record like Loom videos before, which is super, super cool. And it gives that real personal flavor. Obviously, you can go and refer people. You can, and a really cheeky piece is like you can actually give them like feedback on their app. Like you could say, hey, I actually went through and redesigned your website, or I went through and like rewrote the copy of your website. So being proactive and be like, here's what I would do to improve it, and just sending that to them and just seeing what happens. It's very low risk. I think in general, yeah, giving feedback on the product or writing about the company, like writing an article about, like you could write an article on, oh, like, how Eucalyptus has grown to become, $1 billion company by using Instagram marketing or something. I don't know if they're quite a unicorn yet. You'll have to fact check me on that one. But yeah, the point is that I think there are so many ways to proactively stand out that are not a resume and are not a cover letter. Like if you want to stand out and you want to be in a job pool of 1 and not of 500, do something different.
Yeah, that's so important. So important. And I think, even like something like a personal brand, like we spoke earlier, things like that combined with all this, like, yeah, it's really, really powerful when you're going to apply for jobs like this.
For sure. And I think also, like, I mean, coming back to that personal brand thread, it's really interesting because I think having a personal brand online just creates luck. Like, I've gotten lucky many, many times in my life. And I think a lot of my career success is almost just down to luck. But I do think that having a personal brand, like, amplifies your luck. Just more lucky opportunities come up. For instance, like, I was pretty active on LinkedIn. I was one of those cringe, LinkedIn memes for career-minded teens type of people. And I would like make posts on LinkedIn and stuff. And I won some award in like the business consulting space, made a post about it, and actually ended up getting a message from a guy who was working at Google. And he's like, hey, like, love your profile. Would you be interested in an internship at Google? I was like, oh, sweet. And now this guy ended up moving to Uber, I think a couple months later, like we kind of lost touch and then reconnected. And he's like, hey, actually, I'm now at Uber, but we're bringing on like interns and like we've got like 1 spot left. Would you be interested? And I was like, yeah, sure. That's awesome. And end up getting an internship at Uber in sales purely from just someone who had seen my content on LinkedIn. So that's what I'm saying. Like, isn't like having the personal brand? It's yeah, not who you know, it's who knows you and for what. They just encounter your content, and that's kind of like the initial funnel into okay, then opportunities with you. It's advertising for you, pretty much.
That's cool, and it's exciting that everyone has this ability too. I think there's no wall or barrier between you and doing like having that story like what you just mentioned, like getting people coming to ask you for jobs. Like there's absolutely nothing in the way. So yeah, it's so valuable.
Yeah, I think that's super important, right? Because like from an equity, diversity, access, inclusion perspective, you look at traditionally like hiring in, more traditional industries like consulting, law, and banking, and there's often been a perception of nepotism or of like, oh, you have to have friends in the firm or you have to, know people at the firm. I think the beauty about online content is anyone can do it. It's permissionless. You don't need to know anyone. You just start creating. And if you're creating good stuff and you're creating consistently, it'll attract people who care about those things. I think the really important thing there then becomes, okay, how do we actually help more young people, particularly people from underrepresented and disadvantaged backgrounds, actually take advantage of the power of content creation for their careers? Because I think it just gives you a massive, massive advantage.
Yeah, totally. And